March 20th, 1995. A group releases a nerve toxin called sarin into the Tokyo subway system. Now, sarin is one of the most incredibly deadly toxins ever synthesized. We're talking an estimated 500 times more potent than cyanide. So this poses a really massive, real-life problem for the scientists and engineers who actually need to study how chemical weapons spread so they can protect us. Think about it. How do you study the behavior of a gas that is so profoundly dangerous? Obviously, if you want to test how it moves through a building's ventilation system, you absolutely cannot use the real thing. So what do we do? How exactly do we safely study a chemical that is 500 times more deadly than cyanide? Well, scientists use a pretty brilliant workaround. They use a completely harmless dummy gas called sulfur hexafluoride, or SF6 for short. And they use it because it perfectly mimics the physical properties of sarin in the vapor phase. I mean, it spreads the exact same way, it sinks the same way, and it basically behaves exactly like the deadly toxin would out in the open air. And looking at this really illustrates the contrast. On the left, you've got sarin gas, right? Highly toxic, completely deadly. On the right, sulfur hexafluoride, non-toxic and totally chemically inert. It's actually so safe that workers don't even have to take special precautions when using it, other than, just making sure the room has enough oxygen. In fact, SF6 is commonly used as an aerial tracer in totally normal building ventilation systems. But you've got to be wondering, right? Why does this perfectly safe gas behave exactly like a deadly nerve agent?
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the numbers here. Sarin has a molecular mass of about 140 AMU, and sulfur hexafluoride, it has a mass of about 146 AMU. They behave similarly in the air because they have almost the exact same molecular mass. And this, right here, is exactly why understanding chemical mass isn't just some abstract textbook concept you memorize and forget. It's a critical, real-world skill that literally keeps people safe and solves massive engineering problems.
So by the end of this explainer, you're going to completely master formula mass. You'll get the simple math behind it, and you'll understand the crucial rule differences between covalent and ionic compounds. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The grocery receipt of chemistry.
Okay, I know that looking at chemical formulas with all those letters and tiny subscript numbers can feel super intimidating at first, but finding our formal definition for formula mass is actually incredibly simple. It is simply the sum of the average atomic masses of all the atoms represented in a substance's formula. That basically means we're just looking at a chemical recipe, we're counting the ingredients, and we're adding up their individual weights. And where do we get those weights? Right off the periodic table. Easy.
Think of it literally exactly like a grocery receipt. If you go to the store and buy 3 apples that cost $1 each, and maybe 1 loaf of bread that costs $2, what do? You multiply the quantity by the price and add it all up. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 equals $5. Formula mass works the exact same way. You just take the number of atoms, multiply it by the atomic mass of that specific element, and sum the total. It is literally just grocery store math.
Section 2. Weighing covalent molecules.
So when we're dealing with covalent substances, and remember, those are where atoms are sharing electrons to form distinct molecules, this formula mass is specifically called molecular mass. Let's look at a practical example together. Chloroform, its formula is CHCl3. Now, this is a covalent compound that was famously used as a surgical anesthetic back in the day, but today it's actually primarily used to manufacture the anti-stick polymer Teflon for your cooking pans. Let's actually work through the math here line by line. Looking at the formula, CHCl3, our grocery list has 1 carbon, 1 hydrogen, and 3 chlorines. Now we just look at the periodic table for our prices, or, our atomic masses. Carbon is about 12 AMU, hydrogen is roughly 1, chlorine is about 35.5, so we just multiply that by 3 to get our subtotal. Finally, we sum up our column to get our highly precise total molecular mass of 119.377 AMU. See? Just a simple receipt. Nothing crazy.
Let's try just one more to really lock this in. And we'll increase the complexity just a little bit with something you probably have sitting in your medicine cabinet right now, ibuprofen. It's the active ingredient in Advil and Motrin. Its molecular formula is C13H18O2. Okay, so here's our table. We multiply our 13 carbons by roughly 12 to get about 156. The 18 hydrogens gives us about 18, and our 2 oxygens give us nearly 32. We just add those precise totals from the table together, and bam, we reach a molecular mass of 206.285 AMU. And hey, if you followed that, congratulations, because you've completely mastered calculating the mass of covalent molecules. But wait, I just know there's a really sharp student out there right now asking this exact question. What about ionic compounds? Ionic compounds are made of cations and anions, right? Atoms that have literally lost or gained electrons to form their bonds. So if a sodium atom completely loses an electron to become an ion, doesn't its mass change? Shouldn't we have to somehow adjust our math for those missing pieces?
Section 3. The Ionic Twixt.
Honestly, that is a fantastic, highly logical question. But here is the absolutely crucial point. The mass of an electron is negligibly small with respect to the mass of a typical atom. Here's the big secret. Electrons are so incredibly amazingly light that losing or gaining them just doesn't noticeably change our math at all. Their contribution to the overall mass is literally so tiny that it only ever shows up in the non-significant digits that we'd end up rounding off anyway. So when you're calculating for an ion, don't overthink it. Just use the regular neutral atom masses right from the periodic table.
However, there is one very important difference we really do need to establish here, and it's basically just a matter of terminology. Because covalent compounds form distinct individual molecules, we call their total weight molecular mass. But ionic compounds, like salt, they don't form distinct single molecules, they form massive, repeating 3D lattice structures. Because they aren't discrete molecules, it's technically incorrect to say molecular mass. Instead, we have to use the broader term formula mass. The math is exactly the same, literally no difference, but the vocabulary changes.
Let's connect this to real life real quick with standard table salt, sodium chloride, or NaCl. This is a classic ionic compound composed of sodium cations and chloride anions, and they're locked together in a perfect 1-to-1 ratio. So, we just set up our familiar grocery receipt table again. 1 sodium, 1 chlorine. We totally ignore the transferred electron and just look up their standard neutral masses on the table, roughly 23 and 35.5. Add their exact values together, and we get a formula mass of 58.4425 AMU. And that's literally it. You didn't even have to learn any new math for this, just a new piece of vocabulary.
Section 4. Recap and what's next.
All right, let's wrap this up with a really solid recap of the absolute most important takeaways from today's explainer. Here are your 4 golden rules to remember going forward. Number 1, calculating mass is just grocery store math. Just sum up the individual atomic masses. Number 2, if it's a covalent compound, we call it molecular mass. Number 3, if it's an ionic compound, we call it formula mass. And number 4, always ignore missing or extra electrons. They are just too ridiculously light to matter. Before we finish up, I really want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. Today, we figured out exactly how to calculate mass in AMU, atomic mass units. But AMUs measure incredibly tiny, literally invisible single molecules. If you're an actual scientist standing in a real laboratory, you don't weigh things in AMUs, you weigh them on a scale in grams. So how do we cross that bridge? How in the world do we convert these tiny, invisible AMU numbers into actual physical grams we can scoop up and weigh? Well, that actually requires a very specific, magical number, and it just so happens to be the exact topic of our next explainer on the mole. You definitely won't want to miss it. Keep studying, and